Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I've got 4 replays in the independent Era 3 tech tree MBT, the TK-X. Now if you do like the video, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe down below as it really does help out the channel. And yes, the TK-X, it is the entry Era 3 for the new Japanese Cold War tech tree that has come out. And for an entry era vehicle into Era 3, it's actually pretty darn good. It's a very, very competitive tank. The gun is really nice when you're in the siege mode, still pretty good when you're outside the siege mode. You do have to put up with a bit of the bubble if you go into that siege mode though. And realistically, you do kind of want to be in that siege mode if you're in a nice fighty position, because the gun becomes utterly phenomenal. If not, you have to put up with the gun being a little bit derpy outside of that siege mode. And again, even though it's got stupidly accurate gun, it still feels derpy outside the siege mode. It's really frustrating in that regard. Does that mean it's absolutely awful outside the siege mode? Absolutely not. It's just one that you might need to be in the siege mode when you're in those good positions. It's not absolutely necessary though. If you want to avoid playing with it, you can quite easily do that in the TK-X. You can just go, hey, you know what, siege mode, schmeege mode. I don't need to play that whatsoever. I don't need to ever use it. If you want to do activate that siege mode, press left on the D-pad. That will get you the siege mode as you're seeing right here. Will give you better gun depression and way better gun handling. But like I said, the gun handling in Era 3 in general is always really good, and this tank is no real different outside of it. So, the TK-X, it's got a 77.33 km/h top speed with the build that I run, with a 46 km/h reverse speed, which has got a 1500 horsepower engine, meaning the vehicle has a 28.85 horsepower per ton ratio, meaning it is super duper mobile. It'll hit the top speed very, very easily, and also get out of dodge very, very quickly by reversing, which is also glorious for the TK-X. And with the 28 horsepower per ton ratio, very easy to ever get anywhere near your top speeds. You've got 55.15 degrees a second on the hull rotation speed, which means it does turn very, very fast on its tracks, which can be quite nice for the TK-X. Ground resistances that don't hold the tank back whatsoever in this vehicle. 548 meters of view range, which means you can spot for yourself pretty decently in the TK-X while you're stock, because all these statistics are while you are stock, which is what you're going to see in these first 2 replays. With a 48.65 degree a second rotation speed, which means the turret turns pretty quickly, but still way slower than the tracks, so bear that in mind with the TK-X. You've got 0.57 accuracy during rotation, which is pretty good. But a 1.72 accuracy during movement is not that good in the TK-X for Era 3 standards. There's quite a few of the Era 3 MBTs that aren't Soviet and have these 120mm guns that are the sort of Western versions of the guns that are running below 1.2 without the gun stabilizer, and this is with the gun stabilizer, so the accuracy during rotation is actually pretty poor. Does that mean the aim circle is going to bloom out loads? Not really. It just means that you're more likely to miss shots on the move, whereas a lot of the other MBTs will just snap you instantly on the move every single shot and hit every single shot on the move with absolute ease, because they just generally do. You've got 0.21 accuracy at 100 meters, which again is pretty accurate. Means that you will hit most of the shots when you are fully aimed. You've got 1.93 second aim time as well, which means that the tank will aim in its gun very, very quickly, which is glorious for the TK-X, but again, not anything new for Era 3. You've got 15 degrees of gun depression when you're inside the siege mode, but if you decide not to use the siege mode, you have 9 degrees of gun depression. And 9 degrees of gun depression outside that siege mode is still more than flexible enough to do whatever you want. But having 15 degrees of gun depression when you activate the siege mode is just absolutely beautiful. But naturally, you've got to put up with the bobble of the gun, of the suspension, if you do that. You have 20 degrees of elevation in the siege mode as well, which means the gun really does look up a lot if you decide to use it. You got a 5.03 second reload, which is 6,000 DPM, with 590 penetration on the standard APFS-DS, 710 penetration on the premium APFS-DS, and 150 pen on the HE, which does 640 damage, and you've got 510 damage on the other 2 rounds. You've got 1640 meters a second shell velocity on the standard APFS-DS, with 1670 meters a second shell velocity on the premium APFS-DS, meaning the shell velocity is very, very nice for the TK-X, and like I said, the DPM is pretty good as well. And generally, all of that as a stock tank is pretty good. It means you're pretty competitive in Era 3, especially since your armour holds up decently well. Again, it's not something that's going to be absolutely impenetrable from the front, because I've had shots go through the front of the turret occasionally, and also the lower plate, and by that I mean there's a little plate that goes off of the lower plate that's easy to pen for a lot of the MBTs. So if you are being shot slightly up at, it's easy to pen you, but a lot of shots will bounce off the mid plate, which is quite nice for the TK-X. And generally, the armor I've found to be okay on this vehicle. Not absolutely impenetrable, but good enough that you have a bit of give and you're not pure paper like quite a few of the entry era 3s like the Chieftains, the MX-32s, etc, etc. So that's quite nice for the TK-X in that regard. So those are the statistics of the vehicle while it was stock. But that was with a crew and equipment. So what do I run in terms of a crew and equipment? I run Born Leader, Rapid Reload, 6th Sense, Steady Aim, Snapshot, Run and Gun, Trap Mechanic, Clutch Braking, Rapid Aim, with the Advanced Loader, the Gun Stabilizer, and the Traction System. Traction system to get up to that 77 kilometers an hour, so I can be a super fast mobile MBT, like a lot of the MBTs in Era 3. The Gun Stabilizer, because if you don't help the gun without the Gun Stabilizer or all 3 gun perks, it can be very derpy outside of the siege mode, and like I say, in Era 3, where most guns are stupidly accurate without having to ever run a gun stabilizer, you want to be able to be competitive in that regard compared to all the other MBTs. Rapid aim and clutch braking to make the track traverse and turret traverse way better, so that this tank just feels super duper nimble, and it can be quite nice for the vehicle to have that. And the advanced loader to make the best out of the reload. But there's plenty of ways you can set the vehicle up. You can decide, okay, the gun handling's good enough without the gun stabilizer, so I'm just going to drop that and run something like the powertrain to move even faster. Or you could run the advanced armor in conjunction with the armor angling perk instead of something like clutch braking, because the track traverse is already really quick, to be able to reduce the amount of damage coming into the vehicle by 10%. It's really down to you and how you want to play this vehicle. So as you saw with the first game, we had a pretty decent game with it while stock, and this second game is going to be a nice game again while we are also stock. So we're on this map, which is Vineyards, and on Vineyards we've played very aggressive, because once again, usually the enemy team pushes down the ABC line very, very quickly, and then you get caught out in this position at C1, and a lot of your team just go and sit on the hill at J9. But it's not quite happened. We pushed very aggressively very quickly because we looked along the line and we couldn't see any of their team pushing this way. So we took the opportunity to just immediately push in and see if we get into a good position to start farming the enemy team. Now, the Asario that pushed in definitely went a little bit too aggressive because it was in a position where their team could quite easily YOLO, and we've taken the position where the TK-X wants to kind of be, which is that little bit further back where we have a bit of give with the armor, but we can be in our siege mode, which means the gun handling on this vehicle is absolutely incredible, and we can just farm away with what is pretty good DPM on this tank. It's not incredible DPM for Era 3, but it's good enough. As you've got tanks like the MX-30s and the MX-40 even, and the Asario and stuff like that running around with 7k plus DPM, they absolutely shred you. But you can still fight back with the kind of DPM that you have, and especially when you play any of the Soviet vehicles, you absolutely poo all over them, which is always lovely for something like the TK-X, because they will struggle to pen you a decent amount, and you won't really struggle to pen them, especially if you fire the 710 pen APFSDS, as that round is absolutely fantastic and goes through most armor plates, unless you're facing something like a Malo or the inconsistent to Pursuit Belka. So you can see I'm trying to take out this Belka in the distance because he's got a big gun. It really butchers my armor. I don't really want it to be alive if I can help it, but I sadly don't get any other shots in there to kill him. So what we're going to do is push forward and see if we can get after the heavy tank that is at H1. If we can get rid of that MBT, that will be a glorious thing, because then we can progress on to the tanks that are left at K1 and K2. Now, sadly, we missed a shot towards the lower plate at the STRV-122A, and he went straight through us. The Belka goes through us, absolutely no problem. So we're going to load the 710 pen APFSDS round to guarantee a pen through the STRV-122A's lower plate. Sometimes you can bounce the 590 pen APFSDS round on, again, some plates that you will guaranteed go through with that premium, so we may as well guarantee it, especially since he's got more hit points. He could end up starting to take us apart a lot easier. But naturally, we have better DPM than this guy, so it's a little bit easier to get rid of him in that regard, and we shut down the STRV-122A. We're up to 10,232 damage with 1,500 assistance. We try and get a shot into the Asario there, but it sadly doesn't go through. We do get a tracking shot into the Asario there, which is always what we want to try and aim for. We got it again, because this time we should hopefully get a load of assistance off of our team coming in to get him. I was kind of hoping that I'd track and pen We should have just gone for the pen shot there because he was going to die no matter what. So we got a bit unlucky that we bounced on that drive wheel, but there we go. We finished the game with a really nice total with the victory. 4 kills, 10,700 damage, nearly 3k assistance. The ace tanker with the 1605 base XP. A really nice game for the TK-X, while completely stock in that game on Vineyards. And like I say, it's a pretty good tank. It does what it does, and for saying that most entry era vehicles for era 2 and 3 generally are tanks that you just say, get past it, and then get to the better vehicles at the end of the tech tree, and you're never really going to touch it again. Tanks like, you know, the Chieftain Mark 11, for example, or the MX-32. The MX-32 isn't too bad, but quite frankly, why would you play the MX-32 when you get the MX-40, right? It's that kind of thing for entry era 3s. And while the Type 90 might be a decent tank, this tank can stand up for itself pretty well, and it is very nice for that. And it did surprise me, because usually when I get to the entry era 3s, I think, I've just got to play it, get the XP, get to the better tanks at the end of it, and I'll have more fun with it. Whereas with the TK-X, got it, managed to play it. Did I have fun? Well, it's questionable, to be fair. But I felt competitive, and that's the main thing that we look for in a vehicle like this, is I felt competitive, I felt like I could stand up for myself, and I felt like I could actually get damage out and have those big games. You just have to put up with the gun feeling a little bit wonky at times because of the fact that it's not locked, well, the reticle isn't locked to your aim like a lot of other vehicles because of the siege mode. And especially when you end up in a situation where you've got smoke in front of you, like here, it seems to go a bit wacky, that aim circle, and you have shots fly all over the shop, even though you're point blank, just because smoke's been popped. It can be a little bit of just a general nuisance with the smoke being popped in front of you, and probably just a little bit of a bug, realistically. So, we're up to 1482 damage so far in this game on Fredvang, and we are now fully upgraded in our TK-X, which is lovely, right? We've managed to get to that point in the grind where we've fully maxed it out. So, we've still got the same top speed and mobility because there is no engine module upgrade, so it's exactly the same for the TK-X. We've got 57.55 degrees a second hull rotation speed, which means the tank does turn very, very quickly, even quicker on its tracks. We've gone up to 3.8k, nearly 3.9k hit points as well, which is very good for an entry era. I feel like this is more suited, because there's only 2 tanks for this line in era 3, I feel like this is suited to be more like a mid-era than a bottom era. But that's the nice thing for the TK-X. You got 581 meters of view range, which is good enough in era 3. 48.65 on the turret traverse, which is exactly the same as it was stock. When you get the turret module upgrade on this vehicle, it is upgrading your hit points. You got 0.42 accuracy during rotation with a 1.38 accuracy during movement, which is very good. It means the aim circle doesn't bloom out all that horrendously, to be honest. But it's still not as good as a lot of the MBTs in the era. And that's outside the siege mode. Like I say, if you go into the siege mode like you've seen me just do a minute ago, the aim is incredible. You've basically got no dispersion in the siege mode whatsoever, so the aim circle doesn't bloom. You don't have to wait for your aim time whatsoever. You just get to keep firing the gun. That's the kind of shot, by the way, I'm talking about when you're outside that siege mode, where the gun just says, hey, you know what, I could just miss now. And you go, I was aiming at the top, how did you go there? You know, one of those frustrating ones, but there you go. We've got 0.19 accuracy at 100 meters, sorry, which is incredibly accurate, again, like every other MBT in Era 3. 4.89 second reload is 6.2k DPM, which again is very good DPM. There's just a couple of other vehicles in the era that can shred you very, very easily. They have way better DPM, but 6.2 is nothing to sniff at in general. And your penetration stays exactly the same as it was when you were stock. Same as your aim time does as well. And you've moved up to 16 degrees of gun depression now when you are in the siege mode, which can be nice for the TK-X. And without the siege mode, you're actually in 10 degrees of gun depression now, which is, again, you've gained an extra degree of gun depression outside of the siege mode, which again limits the use of the siege mode for most people, because most people will just be like, 10 degrees, I'll stick with that, and then I'll stick with the gun handling that it's got without the siege mode, because siege mode can be a bit awkward at times, and when you miss those shots with the bobble, yeah, it can be annoying. So it's one of those things, you can just take or leave the siege mode, but it can be very, very handy for those moments where you decide, yeah, I'm going to have that incredible gun handling. So this third replay that we're here on Fredvang. We've managed to get 6.7k damage so far with 196 assistance. Managed to bounce a couple of weird shots there on the sides of people like that BU and on the tow pole as well. Although trying to shoot the front of a tow pole can be a bit awkward. Managed to get a shot in to shut down the T-72 BU. And with the tow pole gone, there's only one tank left on the enemy team, which is that MBT that is at E5. So we're just going to try and use the mobility of the TK-X, which is very, very good. It's not the quickest to get up to its top speed. And as you're seeing here, we are going up a hill, to be fair, but we're travelling at 50 kilometers an hour. Quite a few of the other vehicles, again, will just zoom up to the top speed and not struggle with ever getting towards that top speed. Whereas this vehicle can sometimes feel a little bit sluggish off the mark. So we get there to get the RBRT shot into that object 640, and we finish the game with the victory. Top of the team, 6 kills, 7,015 damage, 196 assistance. First class, the Top Gun with 1525 base XP. Pretty nice game there for the TK-X on Fredvang, showing off just what it's capable of. And to be honest, it was a fairly averagey game for this tank there in Era 3. So we're on to the fourth and final replay of this video, and this one we're on this map, which is Swamp. Go around like a donut swamp, because what always happens on Swamp is their team will go down the JK and then up the 1-2 towards our cap. Our team will do exactly what we're about to see, which is they'll push the BC line and then down the 9-0 line and be in their cap. And what can happen quite often is it ends up being one team caps, one team tries to cap, or one team has a couple of people try and cap and the other team splits to go and try and defend their cap, and then the team that splits end up losing because they run headfirst into 14 other vehicles, which can be a bit frustrating. The other thing that happens quite often is exactly what's happened here, where my team's rushed up into the AB0 corner, whereas their team just hasn't bothered with this flank whatsoever, which is the most common thing that happens on Swamp, is that the enemy team never bothers going this way. So you can push straight to this position I've come to here at G89, and you will have very little opposition, and you'll be able to catch out anyone that loaded into the game late, or those that decided that this flank was an idea to come and try and stay on and fight. Because some people do go sit at the position at G7 to try and shoot the guys coming down the 9-0, and they'll find that they're one of 2 or 3 people, and with 15 tanks come flying in, your death is assured here in Era 3. It's one of those things that I just don't like about Era 3 is this kind of play, because it does end up just being go around like a donut, and the team that stops loses, or the team that splits up loses, which is just a bit, because it just ends up being a wolf pack, smash head first into people. So the Object 292 in front of us, we're going for the shot into the side of that Object 292. He really isn't bothered, so we put another shot into him, hoping to get the kill on him on RBRT if we can get him. But my driving strikes again, and sadly, we didn't get the kill on that guy as we ended up bouncing. So we see the MBT that's on our left, and what we're going to do is go and try and shut down this Type 59D as we get closer to the cap, because something is trying to cap. I'm not sure why, because unless you get 3 people in the cap, it's very difficult to cap in Era 3 just because of how fast everything is and how fast they get to it. There it is. It's the TCM AGS from earlier on. RBRT on the move, and sadly, we end up doing track damage only. But we aim the shot this time, and we finish off that TCM AGS. It's currently 1310. We're up to 4.2k damage. And we're back where we started. Yeah, we're back where we started. We're at our cap. We're at our spawn point. Their team has charged straight down the BC line. We're going back down the 8-9, and they've come through the middle of the map to meet the rest of the team. Our team's just basically stuck together and ploughed back up towards our cap. So we're going to go to the middle of the map where they are, because they are now in no man's land, where we can try and get some easy shots into them as they progress into the boggy swampland in the middle, which can really hamper their mobility. And if they get caught out in the open, it means we can keep them pinned in areas, and they will struggle to get out of it while bleeding a lot of hit points. So if we can take the advantage of that, then hopefully we can get a lot of damage out and just shut down the enemy team pretty quickly. So we're keeping this 2A5 pinned. We've managed to track and pen him. Sadly, we got knocked there, which knocked off our little bit of angle that we had for tracking and penning him. But we're going to keep trying to farm shots downrange into this guy while he is still out in the open. We're trying to retrack him if I humanly can do, because that'll feed us some assistance damage. There we go. We track him in the open. I'm like, please, team, shoot him. There we go. 987 in, and we're just going to keep him pinned, but he's actually repaired his tracks there. bounce off his upper plate because we were going for the lower plate, but it didn't happen. The Asario in front of us, we go for that lower plate, but well, we all know what the Asario's upper plate, mid plate, sorry, is like. It may be big, fat, and open, but for some reason, even though it doesn't look that thick, you just can't pen it. And it's super duper frustrating, unless you load the 710 pen rounds, in which case, all of a sudden you do start to go through it, or you go through the turret ring of the Asario like we're doing right here. So we'll go for the side of his turret as he starts to run away, and if this guy's running away, we want to make the most of getting the shots into him so he's not as much of a pain for my team as he hits them in the face. These guys will possibly one-shot the M1. I'm waiting for the shot to reload, and sadly we bobble a little bit on that ridgeline. We should have made better of that shot so we could kill that M1, but the 292 ended up finishing him off, so it's okay. We're up to 7.7k damage, and we're just going to use our mobility now to get around the Asario that's in front of us. But sadly, the Asario shoots us in the side and damages our ammo rack, which is really frustrating timing because I did want to start going in on this guy, but thankfully the repair kit is back just in time. Hopefully get the kill on the BMP as well. Finish him off. Next kill? No, BMP gets shut down. Meaning it's just the Asario from earlier that was in front of us. Going for the RBRT. Hopefully get the shot in before he dies. And yoink! We finish off the kill there on that Asario. Getting at 4th kill of the game. 8.8k damage. The victory for that 1437 base XP. A pretty damn nice game there for the TK-X. Once again, on Swamp. Just showing off what this vehicle is capable of. It is a pretty good entry era vehicle for the Japanese tech tree, and it's a nice introduction into Era 3, because then you'll get from this to the Type 90, and I don't think you'll suffer playing either of these two vehicles in regards to just feeling underwhelming. So as always, everybody, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.
A great success.